Good morning there, YouTubers. Let's see how glitch-free we can do it. As I've been practicing the one take lately, no post-editing, just get it up to YouTube. These are my early free videos. This is before, any major animations where we actually took more advantage of the goldmine of untapped scenarios embedded in this sort of literature poetry that came out of the American Transcendentalist tradition in the throughout the 1900s, but synergized and synopsized in synergetics, which is I've been doing a bunch of these videos. We're up to double digits here. Some of my favorites, I like the makerspace one, where I go to make a 3D print an S module, which if you've been following, those are important in what we call the Koski identities, where phi-scale sums, linear combinations of phi-scale S modules, give us the volumes of some well-known shapes. Phi up, phi down, we do that with the E module as well. So what I'm suggesting here, I've done a lot of middle school, high school level videos. I wanted to, if you're in the philosophy realm and you want, what's a good entry point? American Transcendentalism, blah, blah. So you can link to the other Transcendentalists, talk about Edgar Allan Poe as being skeptical, but he did admire Margaret Fuller quite a bit, if you can dig that up. That's my reading anyway. But a whole other approach, right? So you don't have to go in through American Transcendentalism. You can go in through Wittgenstein. And Wittgenstein is a major player, right? Big, big name in philosophy of late. I know quite a bit about him myself. I ran this by Applewhite too. He liked it. This approach actually was kind of landing into the Bucky corpus through Wittgenstein, but how exactly? Devil's in the details. What do we do? So if you know philosophical investigations, right, it's about meaning, the very concept of meaning, not really the meaning of life, but how do I mean cup? What is it when you point? Is meaning derived from pointing? The kind of the basic mechanics of how do we mean stuff? How do we do that? Not the meaning of life. It's difficult because philosophy, there's a stereotype that, you get a beard and you sit on a mountain kind of like a guru and talk about the meaning of life. And I'm not saying Wittgenstein was not a serious thinker. He read a lot of Tolstoy. He's a deep guy. And his life took many sharp turns. He tried to immigrate to Russia at one point. He fought in World War I on the losing side, you could say, in artillery. So I just saw that movie where they remastered World War I archival vintage footage and put in colorization and even 3D. I can imagine Wittgenstein in that situation. So that's around when he writes his first breakthrough Tractatus, and this is later in his life. He's kind of alienated some of his friends with this later approach, which is quite different. But meaning has another aspect to it, you could say, this duck rabbit, where you learn that meaning is not just a matter of the machinery of how you use words, like how the meaning of a pawn in chess revolves around the meaning of chess, which means you actually need to know what games are. And he dives into language games. What do they all have in common? Well, nothing in particular. They're all language, but what's language? Where's the line? When you drive down a street and you're following that line and the traffic signals and everything else, like you're a driverless car, except you're not. You're doing your machine learning. Is all that language? I mean, it's being processed. You could say the computer has to treat it as language. Why not you? Or as input. It's easy to get to reading Wittgenstein, the position that let's just start with, it's all language. Like, give it some unifying name, and language is a good place to start. That kind of helps remove subject-object. But regardless of that, beyond meaning as having a mechanical aspect, use, there's the flash of insight. There's where you see something change somehow. Something shifts He gives examples of like going for a walk and thinking that King's College is over there, but then boom, you realize it's over there, and everything's changed. Your landscape hasn't. It's you're just walking in a field, you don't see King's College, but you suddenly realize, and it reorients you somehow. This is part of meaning. Aspect shifts, he calls it. And the whole second part of philosophical investigations tends to collect notes in this part of his investigation where he's looking at duck rabbits and such. So you know about the duck rabbit. It looks like a duck, then all of a sudden, boom, you see that it's a rabbit, or vice versa. And there's a lot of renderings of this, and of course there are many other pictures that have this property. And Fuller's trying to draw attention to that. So then lastly, where the bridge to Bucky is it's kind of a flash of insight that you could have when you break away from seeing third powering as a cube. Like second root of 2 cubed is this cube if I've labeled it right. But as you know from my synergetics videos, we can also look at this same cube as having a volume of 3. And what's the perceptual flip that you need to do? What's the duck rabbit required? The Necker cube thing. And I think it took a while for me to get that Applewhite was sort of actually hinting that this was exactly the way to go. But he was holding up a mirror for me at that point. I have a blog entry on this, and thinking I should see this guy in Florida as a genius. And I don't get it that he's actually showing me what I'm like. I've got the Necker cube there, but the rest of it took me a while to see. Now, once you do jump into Fuller through philosophy or whatever path you take, then the segues to the rest of culture are pretty easy. You've got a guy who went around the world like 42 times, hung out with Indira Gandhi, lived that whole 20th century, and did it in a big way. So in terms of then accessing history, you don't have a problem there. It doesn't mean you have to agree or buy all of his narrative. In fact, some of his stuff is fairy tale, really tall tale, kind of maritime tradition. You're throwing off believers left and right. You don't need those. So, and then other styles too. He's a multi-style guy. So once you're into this literature, you've got a lot of places to go, and you don't have to stay in it. You can use it as kind of a merry-go-round and jump off somewhere else. Recommended. This is to the philosophy teachers out there. Transcendentalism, yes, but Wittgenstein, very much yes. It's a whole new, like, how do we use the word basis vector? Is it okay with quadrates to say we have 4 of them, but what about linear independence? And suddenly you're into philosophy of mathematics in the way that Wittgenstein does it. Investigation of meaning through use. Remarks on the foundation of mathematics. Quadrates will take you there, I think. Could be wrong. It's the way I do it. Works for me. All right. Talk to you soon.